Next, we'll move into council business, and our first item is a Riverside Park Design and Engineering update from Half and Associates. Joe Loretta, and there's several people from Half. I'll let you guys organize your presentation, so welcome, good to see you. Good evening.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having us. Can you pull up the PowerPoint presentation?
You will need to tell us when you begin talking who you are so the clerk can get your name associated with who's talking.
All right. Well, Joe Loretta, our Temple Terrace office is 12478 Telecom Drive, Suite 100. I'll primarily be the only one presenting today, but we'll have multiple other staff here for questions and so forth. Let me see if I can move this forward. All right. Well, great. So the project team with me today, Laura Duplain, project manager, myself, Martin Steffen, the senior project manager, your staff, Carl Langerfield, in the back, and then our community involvement coordinator, Nicole Miller here. So before I go too far into the presentation, Mayor, I want to thank you for your kind of history review of the project about 2 months ago. So because of that, I don't really want to belabor much of the history of the overall project. I think everybody has a pretty good understanding of that. And I do have an overall 30-slide presentation or so forth, but at the same time, glad for this to be interactive. If anybody has any questions, so on and so forth, please don't hesitate to reach out and discuss through the process. The goal that we're going to be presenting today is an update of the conceptual site plan from where we were before to where we are today. We will then take any comments, feedback that we can take today or through the next weeks or so, and then come back for our final presentation of the concept to you all within the next month to 2 months.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. I just want to clarify, if council, if you would just jot your questions down rather than, otherwise we'll never let Mr. Loretta get through his. So we'll make notes, and then at the end we'll go back. If that.
Yeah, I'm glad to get through the whole thing.
Yep.
I'm just going to jump right into it. And so where I start off, we're really going to start with the survey results from the initial community meeting concept plan. The first question, how often you visit the site? 65% really have never visited, just a few times per year. 35% are coming to the site approximately once per month, or a few times per month to weekly. How do you really plan to utilize the park? The majority of the folks were looking for exercise and trails, then for water access, and then lastly, it's just more gathering and picnic type opportunities. The next question is, there are several benefits to the Riverside Park design. What are those benefits that you're looking for? A lot of it comes down to pedestrian walkability and these added amenities, along with really focus on environmental sensitive design. You will see that we have added a few amenities to this park that may not have been included at this time when the original survey was. Most of those came from the original pedestrian master plan of downtown that were regretfully excluded from the prior plan. So the next question, please select your preferred amenities. The riverfront boardwalk, the observation tower came in primary focus. A lot of water access, accessibility to the water was primarily focused and favored. But generally, everybody was really in favor of a multitude of these amenities coming to the site. Many of the staff, many of the community comments really included that. So this next slide is a lot of text, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. There's a few of these that we're going to have individual slides on as we go forward. So the last two questions of the survey allow people to provide their own comments and so forth. And so this is just kind of a summarization of many of those comments. The first one concerns homeless and security. We're going to get into that in a separate slide. Existing play equipment, the existing playground section. There were some requests for potential surfacing reconstruction, updated surfacing, maybe look at relocation of the Angel Hope to potentially allow for a new playscape in that area. Potentially the request for more playground equipment at age 2 to 5. Outdoor fitness was requested. That's definitely been included within the updated concept. A splash pad at this point, staff's not really looking to move forward with the splash pad concept, but if that is something that the council is truly looking for, then we can reevaluate. Part of the reason is this is more of a neighborhood park, and a splash pad will definitely become a driver to bring folks to this region more as a regional destination. Dog park was another one. It can provide some park activation and reduce homeless population just through that park activation, but it also provides some noise and so forth to the region. There are also 2 other dog parks in the area as well. Drinking fountains were requested. That has the opportunity to be included within the project. A bat tower was kind of brought up, I'm sure, because of your fun fact, a bat tower is historical to the region. At this point, the staff's not looking to include a bat tower, but we can definitely consider some bat houses and things such as that if that's something the council would really want to pursue. Pickleball is really more of an active sport. It's not really appropriate for this sort of location, just given the noise that the pickleball gameplay has been. In fact, it's odd, but the city of Denver has actually banned pickleball within the city limits. It's very kind of interesting. But bike trails, so this park is not overly large. It's not really one that bike trails where people are supposed to be riding bikes at fast speeds. This is a great location for children to learn bikes, so on and so forth. We're not prohibiting people to ride bikes through this park, but it's not as though it's more of a destination of a biking opportunity, not bike trails within the park and so forth. Restrooms, we're going to also discuss that in a little bit later slide. Lighting and illumination, making sure we're having appropriate lighting is something that will be further evaluated as we go through the design process, but then also, and it's also something when we get into and discuss with security, having views through the park at night, while also kind of minimizing the point source lighting on your neighbor and the neighbors. Public art, it's definitely an opportunity that we can discuss further with the City Arts Council as well as the City Council if that's something that you are looking to include. Signage program, kind of a wayfinding citywide signage program was brought up. That's really not in our scope, but that's definitely something that could be included as an update to the pedestrian master plan and or to connect this park into the downtown core and so forth. Parking was brought up. We are going to be including parking. We'll discuss that. And then water connectivity was also brought up. When it comes to the restroom, so right now, if you look at the exhibit here and you can see that outer boundary, the majority of the site is really within a 2 to 3 minute walk. And so for smaller neighborhood parks like this, many facilities may not even have a restroom facility. Now, granted, right now, there almost isn't a restroom facility because it's never open, and then it's in kind of disrepair. But with that, if the council is adamant about wanting to add an additional restroom, then we can allocate some space really at the northeastern corner, kind of adjacent to the green lawn. But in the grand scheme of things, the overall site, everything's accessible within a 3 to 4 minute walk. And so the reality of what we need to focus on is making the restroom usable, cleaned, and secure, basically. It comes to a traffic study, and so there's some traffic concerns that were brought up. And so I think we poorly answered the question at that time, but I mean, this is a neighborhood park that's so small, it's going to generate a very small volume of traffic, but because of the questions and adamant element to the questions, we ended up having our traffic folks provide us a memo that we then provided to Carl and Carlos. And I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at the ITE generation, this is generating just a few trips. If you just think of rule of thumb, this site is going to be generating less than 50 PM peak hour trips a day. None of that's really requiring a traffic study. This all being said, the road has been considered in the past for some speeding, which is a reason why there's one elevated crosswalk. What we're going to be looking to do is add a second elevated crosswalk, potentially add a mural between those two with the Public Arts Council, and then add some pedestrian beacon signage to allow basically a safe crosswalk from one side of the park to the other. So some survey results from the Homeless and Security. We have met with Chief Staley in the back. I think that was like March 11th or so, along with Officer Tamara Mahalopoulos. I'm sure I'm getting her name wrong. But we're going to focus on a few different elements to the design, and assuming the council is on board and it makes sense, we're going to look at the inclusion of security cameras. It's not really within any other parks. but the police department does have the capabilities to allow for security cameras. We're going to focus on open sight lines and landscaping to make sure that from the road it's lit up at night to a certain level that people can see through all the way through the park, that allows for comfortable policing of it at nighttime. We're going to allow for call boxes as an emergency type call box. Not sure it's really necessary at a small park like this, but it's something that we can consider. And then, the opportunity for existing restroom upgrades. I think as we get into this is something that we're glad to take any comments into the future. Part of the architectural style as it exists includes some red terracotta roofing, or red colored, terracotta colored roofing, and a little bit of Spanish style architecture. It's pretty dated in certain realms, but we are showing maintaining some of the terracotta red roofing, but turning it into metal roofing, maybe adding some brick veneer across the base and cleaning up the stucco, cleaning up the doors, restroom fixtures inside, and so forth. But glad to take any comments or thoughts that y'all have, as well as just primary focus on that. One of the elements that I want to make sure I reassure is right now we're going to be coming back for an updated final concept plan. So the plan in no way, shape, or form is 100% complete. We're still open to ideas and consideration. This next slide, there were some concerns on trees. Right now there's around 200 canopy trees, maybe 35 palms, 4 understory trees. There's a good bit. We're really looking at removing just one 14-inch laurel oak, which was deemed to be in poor health by the city arborist, along with, let's say, 4 palm trees, and then 3 golden rain trees, which are arguable on if they're more noxious than weed-type trees. I don't mind them, but the city arborist is not a fan of them as well. And so that's what we're looking to remove under the current site plan. We have the opportunity to install and include another 39 new trees beyond, could be canopy, flowering trees, a wide variety. So at the end of the day, it's my envisionment that the overall canopy for this site will be greater enhanced in the after condition than what it is today. So this is just a sketch looking kind of northwest into the site with the grand lawn at this, the grand lawn kind of in the foreground, the pond at the top right, and you can see some of the boardwalks and so forth coming out into the river. This next is a sketch from the south looking north, more focusing on kind of the overlook and some of the boardwalk access and activity. We've got a pretty detailed site plan. I'm not going to speak on this slide right here, as what we're going to do is blow up 4 different sections of the overall project, and I'll speak in detail on those so we can get a little bit more into what's going on in the site plan. So the first section is Springdale Pond, Stormwater Pond. One of the things I want to talk about was also brought up, or some questions on, hey, can we just make this pond look like a water retention pond, more of a clean pond? And the answer is yes, we can. But the reality is it was previously permitted, I don't know, within the last 10, 15 years, I forget when, but to be made and permitted to mitigate for wetlands elsewhere, wetland mitigation elsewhere. It was built to become kind of a wetland and look generally as it does today. So with that, if we were to try to turn it back into a legitimate just water pond, then we'd have to add additional mitigation elsewhere and or pay into the mitigation bank to accomplish that. So that's something that can be done, but really originally it was designed and built to look kind of the way it does. What we will be doing is working with our environmental staff, looking at any noxious weeds that have grown up within, kind of identifying regions of where those are, and creating a maintenance plan for those to be removed and replaced with the plant material similar to what was existing or what was proposed when existing got permitted. Looking at this stormwater pond, Springdale Pond, and kind of the perimeter of the overall site, many of the elements did come from the downtown pedestrian master plan, which was developed and approved a year plus ago. We have entry plazas at the northwest and northeast corner. The northwest plaza has some trellis seating, potentially swings if we can work with manufacturers to allow it, overlooking the pond. The eastern section of the overall facility includes some outdoor exercise stations. We have a loop trail that kind of wraps around the entire the entire pond area with a overlook and boardwalk on the southern side with views north along the pond. The southwestern corner is also kind of a little picnic grove as well underneath the nice, beautiful tree canopy that exists today. Here, if you can see within your screens there, looking kind of around, going from left and back around, looping around. The photo at the left side of your screen is looking through that entry plaza at the northwest corner of the site. Picture B is looking at kind of the outdoor fitness equipment. Picture C is looking at the picnic grove. D is kind of a southern view towards that overlook, or towards that boardwalk crossing over the existing pond. And then E is actually looking north from that overlook, or that boardwalk crossing the pond north along the pond. This is just an example of the outdoor fitness equipment that we're going to be looking to locate on the facility. This is one of 2 or 3 options that exist out there, but greenfield is what we're showing, and it's definitely utilized in many locations across the state. So the existing portion of the park that exists, this is the next slide we're going to get into. There is definitely, if the council desires, opportunities to expand some playgrounds underneath portions of the tree canopy that exist today. And so that is something that really hasn't been evaluated as of yet, but can be if that's something that is requested to look at further. If we do want to do that, we may have to remove a couple trees, but we could also incorporate some nature-based play elements and kind of have it tie into the natural environment, which would be a nice little element there. Kind of going around this overall project, we've got 2 new pedestrian crossings from east to west, from the existing park facility to what I guess we'll call the new park facility, the open lawn portion. And the first one on the left, letter H, that actual crossing has been shifted south off the road to avoid a nice 42-inch live oak at that kind of northeastern portion of the kind of, let's say, ditch and roadway. So that way we can look to maintain that 42-inch live oak and help within that section. Let's see here. Going around, we have a boardwalk that's running down the full east side of the ditch out to kind of the boardwalk along the waterfront. The boardwalk along the waterfront will allow for a kayak vendor to be able to situate out there. Carl has been working with a kayak vendor or 2 to discuss options for that. And then it continues out to a fishing pier, fishing dock, which there was some discussion on fishing dock, some positive, some negative within the review. In the end, you're going to have a landing platform to get to a kayak launch. So at minimum, we wanted a little bit larger than just the boardwalk itself, just so you could have views. And so if the fishing dock wants to be reduced, then that can. Here we also include that overlook tower that's been discussed. Let's see here. We're adding some picnic tables around, additional picnic table and another pavilion. And then there at item U, an updated monument sign for the park. These are just some existing photos of the facility from the existing signage, the existing restroom, the existing playground, and again, part of the request from some was maybe enhancing the surfacing within that existing playground, the Angel of Hope, and the existing pavilion. As we go into the next slide, this is showing some of the proposed enhancements. Picture A is showing new signage along with kind of that boardwalk crossing over the ditch there. Picture B is showing a little bit more enhanced of that boardwalk crossing over the ditch. Picture C is showing what, as we discussed earlier, what could be the restroom, what it could look like. Picture D is looking back towards the overlook, and picture E is looking from internal to the site out towards that overlook. So I guess what we're calling here is the vacant parcel, which is the new portion of the park. This is where a lot of excitement occurs, along with really around Springdale Pond. Here, this is really focused around the Grand Lawn, which is a 16,000 square feet approximate Grand Lawn oval with the pedestrian trail wrapping around. We have new pavilions, nothing of significant size. The two on the right side of your picture are just one bench, and then the one at the bottom left of the grand lawn is just two picnic table sizes. We are including a one-way 20-space parking lot that can be well vegetated and buffered from South Riverside Drive. And then kind of a little bit of an entry plaza into that grand lawn section. Beyond this, let's see here, what else do I want to talk about? There, underneath the tree canopy, we have some sidewalks that connect, and then on the western W, I think that was just mislabeled, but underneath the tree canopy, there is areas where we could potentially include some maybe nature play on that side of the park versus the western side. It is an area that could include some additional enhancement, but it's also very nice to just be maintained passive. Here we get into, again, some, and I'm sorry for the audience that the screen's maybe not as big, but the pictures at top left here, this is a view into the grand lawn through the entry plaza. Picture B is more of a bird's eye of that. Picture C is, a look at what the new pavilion could look like, fairly similar to the existing pavilions with a little bit of enhancements. We will be illuminating them at night to maintain light within those pavilions to reduce any sort of homelessness and so forth. Picture D, just maybe what it looks like underneath the tree canopy, and then picture E is more of the boardwalk along the creek. One thing before I get to this video, I want to discuss that within that grand lawn, we are looking to include some enhanced turf within the grand lawn so it shows off a little bit more as a signature. So hopefully this works. We shall see. There we go. So this is, south of the park, kind of looking at the overlook. You can see the boardwalk coming out to the floating kayak launch. You can see the overlook tower shown conceptually here is 20 feet high. When we get to the end of this video, you'll have drone footage that goes from that overlook showing kind of what existing conditions kind of look like. And really there's no opportunity to see any sort of existing homes or anything of that nature because it's just fully vegetated. When we get into the new park here, we're walking through and coming up upon the grand lawn. Showing off a little bit of the entry plaza and the parking lot, pavilion. You can see that pavilion showed two picnic tables. It's nothing of significant size there. We probably should have had music to this, but that's okay. Now we've got some picnic tables underneath the tree canopy, or not picnic tables, just benches and sidewalks underneath the tree canopy that then connect to the boardwalk that's running along kind of the ditch line. We'll vary between going over the ditch and then onto the just the upland portion right there. Looking across, you can see the existing park facility, existing restroom. I believe we're going to cross the park here and go to Springdale Pond. You can see the bridge crossing overlooking this pond facility right here. This is one of the pedestrian crosswalk connections similar to what exists today. And then what we did not show is kind of a mural between those two pedestrian crosswalks. Here we have the opportunity for a picnic grove underneath the treed canopy. We will have one of those be ADA accessible and can have more if necessary. On this side, this is where outdoor fitness equipment is located. We should probably speed this up for the final presentation here for y'all. But it's a nice little video. Entry plaza. We're going to come into this northwest quadrant, showing off some trellis features and some benching overlooking the pond. Kind of a beautiful view from the northwest corner. And then here, this is the view from the overlook. This is what existing conditions look like that are looking back at the existing homes to the east. And so that's going to be the view from the overlook. This is just more of the rendered view. So at this point, you know, we have not made any determinations on site furnishings. Wanted to show a couple options, more recycled plastic with benching, or recycled plastic bench with metal, more metal bench or all wood. Similar situation for a picnic table, recycled plastic picnic table, all wood or potentially metal. I'm more inclined to utilizing metal and wood or metal and recycled plastic as a recommendation that I would have, but glad to take any comments that you all would like. Then we get into the boardwalk, and we didn't, you know, there's maybe 6 different options for the boardwalk surfacing and railings. We're going to focus kind of on 3, just straight treated pine, pine wood, and so that's going to be the least cost effective, or the least costly right off the bat, but then as we get into it, it's going to definitely be the most maintenance over time. And then what we do have is opportunities to look at 2 different options. One is kind of a HDPE, which is really a structural based, let's say, Trex material. So Trex is a HDPE, just not structural. And then another option is a semi-affordable hardwood. And this is, I'm going to pass this around. I think this is my preferred option if the council is open to that thought process. But basically, in looking at the overall, when we get through the railings on this next slide, if we do go the option of either the HDPE or the hardwood on the surfacing as well as on the railings, it's going to be about a $400 to $500 upcharge of the $500,000 upcharge of the overall project in a costing perspective. And so then we also have fencing options where we could have wood or metal fencing, and that, you know, we are going to have fencing and gates. I didn't mention that earlier, but we will have a gate on the parking lot facility, and then fencing that kind of prohibits somebody from going from the parking lot and just like driving into the park. We will have that as well. And then you can see different railing options that are here. I really kind of like the clean, more modern look of the wire rope in the bottom right picture, but there's multiple different options between horizontal pickets, vertical pickets, or kind of the wire mesh option. The wire mesh option, you may think is pretty cost effective, but that's actually one of the most expensive options, as there's multiple layers of detail that has to go into that. So as we continue forward, really we're going to come back and look to have a final council presentation and or an updated community meeting here within the next 4 to 6 weeks, depending upon the outcome of today's conversation. Look to get into the later portion of the second quarter through the end of this year with developing the construction plans, and then look for the mid first quarter of 2026 being able to have plans available for staff to go out for bidding when they're ready to go. And at this point, we do have, for anybody in the audience, the updated information on the website. Carl's contact information, I can give you my cell phones, 904-476-5147. You can call or text me as well. But any questions that you guys have, glad to take them right now.
I'm sure we have several. So why don't I start down here with the Vice Mayor? We usually start down here, so.
Okay, thank you. Good presentation. Thank you very much. I'm not sure how much of this is available back during the public meetings, but this would have been a far cry better presentation than what we did get. So thank you for the improvement. A couple real quick questions. Understory trees?
Understory, it's more flowering tree.
Okay. What you're talking about, Springdale Pond, what governmental organization would control the wetland issue in that?
Water
State?
The Water Management District.
Swiftmont?
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, now that comes from the streets and overflow, and then that flows out the canal into the river?
Yeah.
That's
basically.
the general,
The way
that's the overall path of the water flow.
I haven't analyzed the actual permit plans in great detail, but in general, there's water that's flowing into that pond, what I believe is from the downtown portion of the area into that pond. It's basically the water, it's a water quality facility along with the stormwater volume, and that's the reason why there's all that wetland species within, to clean up that water before it is point source directly into the river.
We know what, Carl, we know what we have to do in order to go up to the limit on that, or is there, I guess my question is, can we do some things to it to make it look better without violating the wetland agreement, or what's our options with that?
Those are questions that I've already began conversations with Brian McCarthy, the city engineer, with his expertise and his department is really the driving force behind what we can and we can't do within that pond. So those conversations have already started on how we can improve the aesthetics of that pond and still have it function in the way it was intended to and permitted to.
The only other comment that I have at this point, I'm sure there'll be other questions. The only other comment I have is that in a reaction to the comments that were made by the public and so forth, I feel that this price went up quite dramatically over what we had originally talked about. So I'm not against it, still 100% behind the project. I think it looks great. I like the graphics of it, and I'll defer for any of the questions if it pops up. Yeah.
Councilmember,
I have no questions, comments later.
Councilmember Fernandez.
I have a couple questions. With regard to the walkability, when we look at that space, we've been looking at it as a whole from the downtown area to walk through what is now a retention pond, but to make it more aesthetically pleasing and then connect all of that in a cohesive fashion to the park. So is that part of your design process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really a big focus of this overall project is connecting the pedestrian from the downtown to the river. And so one thing that was not really considered, but I mentioned is more of a wayfinding options that really could be an additional task that we're glad to handle, or however, but it'd be providing wayfinding signage that would be cohesive from downtown to the park, and so that way people kind of understood that pedestrian flow. So that portion, other than we recognize it from a conceptual standpoint, we haven't looked at any sort of design for that sort of wayfinding signage. But in reality is people are going to be able to access the park from the north, from the downtown core section, and visually, I mean, you can see across a good portion of this site, and you can recognize if there is no sort of wayfinding signage, you could see all of the elements on the Springdale Pond portion, walk through that, and then easily see across the street and so forth.
And so right now, I guess adjacent to the Springdale Pond, there is a commercial development under development, and the site abuts the Springdale site.
Yeah.
Will there be an actual barrier between those, or will there be an opportunity for that commercial development? I'm asking because if I were a restaurant going into that commercial development, if it gets developed, to be open onto some open space, even if it's just a sight line, is more appealing than looking at a fence.
So right now, we've been discussing the potential for the development of a new wall, but what you're asking for can easily be determined at this point, however the council may want. I mean, I could fully understand that commercial development wanting to have use to and through the park. There's also been discussion for outdoor seating from that location. Carlos and the city are going to be putting out for an RFP the parcel just to the south, which would be for potential acquisition, which is the southwest corner of that pond as well. And so all of this would be really ideally accessed and viewed from those locations. So we can put up a wall if that's a request, or we could maintain that open.
I think the city manager has some input on this question too. Mr. Bia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So I think that you're speaking about Enigma.
Yes.
So the developer of Enigma has had a request about being able to take down the wall. The concern that myself and the team have is that there's a parking lot basically behind Enigma. It's not as if the restaurant is right up against
Right.
the wall. So what you would be doing, if you take down that wall, you would now have headlights going into the homes that are along Springdale Place. That I don't think anybody really had a vision that that would be what would be created there. And also there have been, as we know, that project has been somewhat of a struggle. And so our philosophy right now is to keep the wall where it is. I think we could contemplate, if the council so wished, there might be some openings and things like that we could consider. But I think that wall will need to be repaired and replaced, but there's some attractive materials out there, whether it be a wall or some type of fencing that would look more appealing. I think whatever you'd want to do, you want it to be complementary to this investment that the city is making. So personally, I mean, I don't know if having a parking lot immediately adjacent and now visible onto this beautiful path that we're contemplating here is really in the best interest of this investment. In the city's property to the south, which is what Mr. Loretta was just referencing at 8447, that's still a clean slate. Like, there's still some opportunities there for whatever development comes that could maybe make a more appropriate connection to that park space. So again, things to consider, but right now at this moment, we are not recommending that the wall come down and be taken out.
Okay, and I just have a couple more questions.
Okay.
You spoke about nature play in the newer area of the park. So I'm actually very in favor of that type of addition where it's interactive but not very busily interactive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about zip lines or anything of that nature, but it'd just be more, it could be opportunities for ground level, pretty simple play materials within the grass, within the turf area. We can make it more formalized. If that's something that you would like us to look at, we can come back with more design or thought on that process.
Well, I'm just wondering what you can bring in that is still interactive, but not necessarily as busy as a full-on playground, but also it is a very beautiful natural setting. And what can we bring in to this setting that might be interactive nature-wise, not necessarily play, but I don't know what those options are, but I think it would be very nice if there are opportunities for people to interact more, whether it's even as simple as following some signage to look for certain plants or look to see if you see certain animals or something like that.
Well, and that's one of the things I did not mention. We are preparing or planning to have some not interactive, but more informational signage wrapping around Springdale Pond that'll include things such as the bird life that exists within the area, the wetland species, more identification of that stuff, and we can bring that across where the ditch is and talk a little bit of the hydrology if we'd like for the region as well. I don't know if that's fully interactive, but we're glad to look at some ideas on what this interactive element could be. I mean, I could see, it's not, again, a playscape, but, we could come out and put a large, boulder in the ground and figure out how to make sure that it's meeting the appropriate size so that way children could climb on it or folks could climb on it without it having a fall zone issue. There's all sorts of things that we could look at. It just really wasn't originally envisioned in the scope or anything of that nature, but it came up as a comment, so I wanted to bring it up.
Okay, then I just have one more question, and that has to do with the kayak access and the potential for other watercraft access. So one is, do we think that kayak space is actually large enough for the potential use? And then the other question is, and I don't know if this site is appropriate, but I know that in terms of the river itself in that area, it seems very appropriate for crewing. And I don't know if this area would be appropriate for people to be able to access with their crew boats, because that is becoming a much more popular sport.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a facility that's built for multiple people to come in and out of, in a moments by moments basis. So I would go to crewing as, you may have multiple different groups and teams coming out and, 4 to 6 people or even a 2-person crew boat. And it just, the crew typical vessel is going to be larger, things such as that. Here, you will have a pretty decent walk from the parking lot to get down to this location, and or you'll be able to utilize the vendor and go out from there. What we've done is, so the water fluctuates, and it's a little concerning on the water fluctuation, but what we've done is there is a defined canal in which the is going up to the ditch, and that generally stays wet all the time, looking at historical aerials and so forth. And so we've located a floating dock platform, which, in my professional opinion, is appropriately sized for 2-3 people to be able to go out there, have an accessible, it could be ADA accessible or just a simple pull-through kayak launch location. I don't have a problem launching a paddleboard in this location, but I know many people do due to the potential threat of alligators and so forth. But so I'm not envisioning anything really other than kayaks, canoes, or paddle boards being utilized in this location.
Okay.
I would say if crew were to be something that, again, it's a long walk. So if crew were to be something that wanted to be focused, the park just, quarter mile, half a mile to the south would be probably more appropriate for that, other than the parking considerations around adjacent to the school, which complicates things down there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a list, but some of it is not questions, it's feedback, so that'll be the next thing we get to, because
Yeah.
I'm sure my colleagues have some too, but I do have a couple of quick questions. And so you mentioned shielding the parking lot from the road. You mentioned some landscaping or the parking lot from River Hills. There's like a,
Yeah, we've created, I mean, there's basically room between the Becca sidewalk and the right-of-way, and then the right-of-way to the parking lot. We've added a 10-foot buffer, which is what I would say is typical for most commercial places. Sometimes a commercial may only have a 5-foot buffer, but within that 10-foot area, we'll have trees as well as a shrub, shrubs to block views to see specific, lower shrubs that are going to block the views of the cars, the bottom portion of the cars. I mean,
okay.
if you have
So
SUVs.
that was what I wanted to question you about, and this is kind of trespassing over into a little bit of feedback, but I want to talk about that because I know that that's aesthetically appealing, but I'm not sure. I'd want to talk to the chief about CPTED, crime
Yeah.
prevention through environmental design.
Well, yeah.
Really think you need to be able to see all the way through this without any shielding, and I know people are going to be looking at cars sometimes, but I think
So-
everybody who drives down River Hills needs to be able to see all the way down to the river.
Yeah, so CPTED principle is really like 30 inches to, like 7 to 8 feet.
7 feet, yeah.
And so, in the end, we can definitely maintain, I think that's smart to just have lower shrubs or
Yeah.
native grasses.
Ground
in that
cover.
section to not be blocking any views. There's no, we're not in any way, shape, or form required to do certain.
The other question I had is, I know this is possible, is it advisable? Is there a plan, I'm looking at all three of you, but, because I know you, but is there a plan to somehow secure the boardwalk at night so that people after hours cannot access the boardwalk and go out to the canoe launch or go out on the tower, is there a plan for that? Because that area, no matter how much we make this visible, that's a long way from natural surveillance. So at night, people could be on the tower, they could be doing anything. Is there any plan?
Yeah, so, from my perspective, staff is going to be working through a maintenance plan on how they're going to coordinate the locking of the restroom facilities. Similar elements to that could be incorporated at the boardwalk. you know, so we could definitely within sections of the boardwalk, maybe not the entire boardwalk because we still got east-west connection.
Yeah.
But the boardwalk along the waterfront, the overlook tower. I presume though that this is going to become, you know, favorite location for many people doing a sunset and so forth. And so I really wouldn't want to recommend shutting it down, you know, until at least an hour after sunset.
So that's a question that's a kind of a bit of a quandary, because I agree with you, that sunset. But the section, I mean, if you tried to gate off the whole thing, you just jump over the rail. That's not, I mean, you can't
Yeah.
do that. But if you gated off the part where now you gotta go knee deep into the river to jump over the rail, right? Anyway, there's further discussion on that, I think, but that's my question. So that's it for questions. So anybody else have any other questions? Okay, don't go far because I think we're going to discuss some.
Sit right here, and if you have any
All
further, don't
right,
hesitate.
and very good, and thank you, Mr. Letta. We're going to have some discussion here, I'm sure. So started down here with questions. We'll start down here with comments. How's that?
Well, I think that it's capturing a lot of what the council and the community have requested. And I'd like to see how well we can engage the community, and especially the people that live around that space. Because I think it's critically important. The other thing is, I do think that while this park space is not intended to be a destination in and of itself, it's still a component of space that we hope attracts people to the area and does become active. So I think we have to be very careful with how much activity we put in the space. But as far as what has been presented so far, I like the concept.
Okay. Councilmember Chambers, I think you had a few things.
I do, and I want to start off with a brief history of Riverside Park, since that was my project many, many years ago. And I say many years ago, so bear with me, this may get a little long.
Do we need to set the timer?
Yes, please do. When the city had the charrettes for all that area down there, one of the things was a park down there, but that current Riverside Park was intended to support the condos that were built on the piece of property that we're talking about now. So that was considered a neighborhood park, just like we've heard tonight about a neighborhood park. You know, the addition is still a neighborhood park, not a destination park. You hit it on there, but we also want to attract people to downtown. So I think that's important to know. So back when the charrettes happened and before the development, the city said to me, hey, we can do this park now. The condos, we're sure the condos will be built. So let's do the park first, and it'll be the cornerstone of the development and get it going. So that was 20-something years ago when this park was designed. And it was designed to support the condos there, but also the homes in that neighborhood, because the nearest park to them is Biltmore, and that's way away. So it was designed as a neighborhood park. Of course, it was built, and then immediately we had parking and traffic issues because a new park always attracts people. So that's a brief history of that. So we're adding on to that and improving it. I like all the concepts you have with the new space to fix Springdale Pond. All that is great, will work out good and attract people down there. But we just have to remember that it's still a neighborhood park. It's only going to have 20 spaces. To your comment about crewing, we've talked about crewing many times. River Hills Park is a more appropriate place, but they have their place on the canal now. So, maybe a one-man shell or something, for somebody's exercise, but not as teams and stuff. But anyway, I like all the things that you're planning to do. Mr. Langfeld, thank you for all that work. That's about it, other than, and I know it's a part of our goal setting, but this council and future councils have to be committed to putting the money into maintenance. I was just thinking the requirement on somebody to lock the boardwalk every night. Things like that. and it's just gonna be a lot of different, more staff costs. So, that was it. That's more of a dissertation,
That
sorry.
wasn't so long. That wasn't, I think you probably didn't exceed 3 minutes.
Oh,
All right, so let me tell you about, we'll talk
Okay.
more, okay?
Vice Mayor.
yes, again, as I said before, I like the concepts, they look really good. Some key issues, I really like the open sight lines down to as close to the water's edge as we can. I think that's critical throughout the entire park. I think that's very, very important. Security on the boardwalk is a concern, as well as using the right material so that they don't have to spend $125,000 in the next 5 years or so to replace that, because we'll all be gone by that time it happens. I do like the concept of making Springdale Pond as open as possible without having to reinvent the wheel. To your point, Carl, with your talks with Brian and so forth. And I'm glad Councilman Chambers brought up the issue of the neighborhood park, because that takes away a lot of the main having to supply a plethora of restrooms down there, because it is a neighborhood park. Biltmore, Bonnie Bray, none of them really have anything other than River Hills Park. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I like it. I think it's good. I think we're on the right path, and looking forward to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I do have some notes here of feedback. I'd like to know if you agree with me or not before. I don't want him just taking notes because I think it's a good idea. So I do agree with some members of the public who voiced concerns about the inadequacy of the current restroom facility. And I know that it's only a 3 or 4 minute walk, depending on who you are. But I think there should be another small restroom structure built. But I think on the northeast part of this park, opposite from the southwest part where the current restroom facility is. I think if you are using the fitness equipment or you're picnicking near the entryway to the park, which is kind of near where the post office is, and you need to use the restroom, that's a hike. I mean, if you time it, it's maybe a 4 minute walk, but it's, I think, less than convenient. And I do think it should have another, I mean, we don't need a huge restroom facility, but I think another one would be a good idea. That's my opinion. I don't know what you
Yes.
think, but, yes.
And yes, but, that's well over $100,000
Yeah, I know.
deal, so.
I know.
And plus more maintenance. And
I know.
again, if we're committed to that, I'm good.
I know, it does add a cost, but there's also, I don't see this, it could be when we get closer down and you start talking about design build costs and that kind of stuff, that there's stuff that we'd like in this design that we can't afford to get right now. So there may be, it's probably pretty likely that there's going to be some phasing to this, because we're going to get, estimates that are higher than the money we have. I think it's important to build what we need to build to get people to use this and to activate the area, even if we have to forego something else that.
So a question to staff, can I?
Yeah,
Which relates
yeah,
to this. So staff and design team, with this idea of another set of bathrooms down there or anything else, can it be designed and presented in phases, all our items?
I think that there's certainly intelligent ways to look at the project and figure out what core pieces that we would incorporate into a first phase, and then how we would supplement the core park elements as we move forward. Ideally, we build the whole thing at once, but the finances may not add up to that. But I think if we can lay the foundation and put the park on site from one end to the other, And then in future years, if we have to add an element or, a piece to the foundation that we've already built, would be the smart way to phase this. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, all I was gonna say is we could definitely bring utilities to a location within phase one. So that way we're not demoing something at a later time, which would then allow for the easy construction of the restroom at a later time. The only element that I will say, the northeast corner of Springdale Pond, I haven't really evaluated that location.
It might not be.
Or it may be, but like adjacent to the parking lot, we can run sanitary sewer and water pretty close to that parking lot facility because there's utilities that I'm aware of there. Just on the northern corner of Springdale Pond, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know exactly
That
what
might not be
utilities are at
the
that
spot.
location.
So, yeah, that was just an example, but I think we need to incorporate that, even if we have to forego something else to offset the cost of that. So, the next thing, and this is, I would think this would happen anyway, I just want to get it on the record to make sure that it does. I know you're talking about 2 raised crosswalks, which are very close together, and then maybe murals on the pavement in between, which sounds cool, I like that. But I would want to make sure before we put 2 raised crosswalks that close together that our public works folks are engaged in this conversation to make sure that that is up, I'd like to make sure we get some feedback from Mr. Warren Felds and his crew over there in that before we just miss it and say, well, the council approved it. I'd like some dialogue with that. My opinion on the call boxes, the little 911 blue phone thing, that's 30-year-old stuff. I don't say there's a perfect thing we could cut, because I don't know when the last time anybody on USF campus has used one of those things. That's perfect cutting edge 1994 technology, and
Older than that.
yeah, that's I don't know how you guys feel about it. I don't know that anybody would even know what to do with that anymore. That's just my opinion, and that would save us, probably not enough for a bathhouse, but it'd save us something. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, and you spoke about this already, so it's not really a question, but I've been down to the pond. I understand how it was permitted, and I knew that before you said it. It's a mitigation pond. I understand it's a functioning stormwater structure, and it's there to filter the water. I understand how that works. But my question would be, and you probably would do this anyway, it sounds like you're already doing it, but I had this conversation with the city manager when we were looking at this, and that is, could the vegetation that's in there, and you kind of alluded to this, it's pretty gnarly. It looks, I know that's a technical term, but it looks
It's accurate.
bad. I mean, it's functional, but I've also seen some of those ponds that are permitted the same way and function the same way that don't look like that. They've got cattails or something else in them, that serves the same purpose but looks a little more attractive. And I don't know if there's a potential to do, I understand that we can't make it a water pond, I get that, but there are some rough nature ponds that look pretty good, that don't look so overgrown and unkept. And so that's something I'd like to explore. Oh, by the way, that's a ditch tonight because of an oversight, but by the next meeting, this will be Enchanted Creek or something else. It will not be the ditch. We will have a name for this thing here pretty quick. Mr. Langfield, can you speak to us a little bit about how you envision the kayak and the canoe vendor situation? Because I know in the past when we were first talking about this on a conceptual basis, there was some discussion about, there's even like vending machines for kayaks. And so what do you envision?
So just a week or so ago, I had a meeting with a vendor that provides not only canoe and kayak launch rentals or canoe and kayak rentals, but paddle boards. They do bikes. They do all sorts of stuff. And it's a big firm, and they do this nationwide, where we provide them with a place to put their equipment. A pad, and I've already discussed with them the size of the concrete pad that we would need to install for them to put their equipment in, and they would come with their racks. The firm that I was speaking with, their racks come in stacks of 4, and you can add as many stacks of 4 as you wanted to in order to meet the demand that your facility may have. I think for this facility, if we had 2 stacks of 4, that would be more than sufficient. And we discussed with them the size of the pad that we would need to put that on, and it would fit neatly kind of in that point area where the kayak launch access would be. The equipment would come with each locker, for lack of a better term, in the stack would include a single-person kayak with a paddle and a life jacket and a life vest. The entire process is cellular and solar powered. So other than putting the cage down, there's no power that needs to run to it. There's no phone lines that need to run to it or data connections that need to. It's all completely self-contained. We are responsible for getting the pad there, and once it's in place, they deal with the install. There's an upfront cost to us, which basically pays for the racks. And it's again, the firm that I was speaking to, there's a 5-year agreement with a revenue split between their firm and the city for each kayak rental. The upfront cost to pay for the kayak racks for the 2 racks, for 2 racks of 4, is going to be somewhere around $30,000. And at the end of the 5-year lease, those racks are ours. They stay with us. The rental firm would have a staff member or a paid employee in the area who would manage the maintenance of the kayak, the paddles, the life jackets, any damage, any theft, any vandalism, they pay for. They handle it. It's all on them. And then the process, we spoke a little bit about the process, and it's all through an app on a phone where you download the app, you unlock the locker, remove the equipment, go paddling, put it back. It times how long you've been out with it, and then you get charged for that time that you were out with it. Again, their employee comes in and does routine maintenance and checkups on the equipment. We spoke a little bit about how our environment, my concern with our environment is a lot of these kayak rental kiosks are on ponds or lakes. Well, we're not a pond or a lake. We're a river. It's open on both ends. You can go to the river, to the dam on one end or as far as you want on the other end. And was that a concern to them? They said, no, we have these on river-type environments all over the country as well. They cover all of the insurances. They maintain a $2 million liability insurance policy on the users of the equipment. So it seems like a good plan. There's some upfront costs to it. As far as, he says, you're not going to expect to pay off the $30,000 investment on a year's worth of rentals. It's going to take longer than that. The revenue split, I believe it was 70-30. They get 70, we get 30 out of each rental. He says they're very popular for sponsorships. So if we could engage with a company like REI and say, hey, would you like to sponsor this? Get people introduced to the outdoors, and now maybe they're going to want to go buy their own kayak from you. I think REI would be a tremendous company to go after and say, hey, would you like to help sponsor this? I hope that it kind of answered your question.
That did answer my question. Thank you very much.
Can I have a follow-up on that?
Yes, Councilmember Chambers.
And this facility, you could certainly bring your own kayak or canoe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. That's all I can think of. Is there anything?
I'm sure there'll be more in the next iteration.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Nothing comes to my mind.
Oh,
Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you.
Appreciate you guys being here. It looks great. So we'll be done by, what, July 1st?
Yes.
Do they have enough to go back?
Thank y'all very much.
Did you, yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Loretta. Okay,